عقد مؤتمر في واشنطن يوم الثاني من حزيران الجاري تحت شعار السياسة الامريكية في الشرق الاوسط وايران وحماية اشرف. وشارك في المؤتمر كل من فليب كراولي مدير عام وزارة الخارجية الامريكية من عام 2009 حتى عام 2011 ومساعد خاص للرئيس في شؤون الامن الوطني عام 1997. والسفير ستوارت ايزنستورت مساعد وزارة الخارجية الأمريكية من عام 97 حتى عام 99، وكيل وزارة المالية من عام 99 حتى عام 2001، والمستشار الأقدم في البيت الأبيض من عام 77 حتى عام 81. والسفيرة نانسي سودربيرغ المستشار الأقدم للرئيس كلينتون في شؤون الأمن القومي من عام 93 حتى عام 97، والممثل الأمريكي في الأمم المتحدة في الشؤون السياسية من عام 97 حتى عام 2001، والممثل الخاص لبيل كلينتون في مفاوضات السلام في إيرلندا الشمالية. ومايكل موكيسي وزير العدل الأمريكي من عام 2007 حتى عام 2009. وبورتر غاس رئيس وكالة الاستخبارات المركزية الأمريكية من عام 2003 حتى عام 2006. والدكتور جان هيلين مدير عام وزارة الخارجية الأمريكية من عام 2005 حتى عام 2007.
Just left the administration 2 months ago. I was standing at a podium much like this as the events were happening in Tunisia and Egypt and beginning in Libya at the time I left. Obviously, the United States was cautious, and there's been some criticism of the administration's caution, both in the context of Egypt, but also going back a couple of years in the context of Iran. The President said the other day in his speech that it is the policy of the United States to support those who are reformers in the region. We have to make sure that we are translating that political commitment into real action and also real resources. We have militarily intervened in Libya. We are demonstrating assertively to those who are resisting change that the international community is prepared to take aggressive action when necessary to protect civilians, but more importantly to preserve forces of reform for fundamental change where power transfers from the autocrats that have been in power for 30 or 40 years to the people. Change is going to occur from the bottom up. It's not going to be imposed from the outside in, but we have to be in a position where we can help shape change and support people and institutions that can bring democratic governance, to the region as a whole, including to Tehran. Options with respect to Iran have to be on the table, but we have to make sure that there are as many non-military options available to the President and the Secretaries of State and Secretaries of Defense. Seeing the tragic pictures and images of what happened last month and knowing what had happened in previous episodes at Camp Ashraf. It is an unsustainable situation. It is a humanitarian tragedy, and it needs to be resolved. It is up to the international community, in my mind, beginning with the United Nations, supported by the United States and the European Union, to begin a process to find a solution that allows the people at Camp Ashraf to depart Iraq and take up residence in other countries. And that should be the policy of the United States. It should be under the leadership with the protection and intervening protection of the United Nations as the international community works to resolve this crisis.
With respect to Iran, as everyone on this panel has been stating, it is important to strengthen the democratic opposition. It is Iran which is the terrorist state. That's where the terrorism emanates. And that's where the focus should be. The State Department is going through their process as the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia required them to do. And I hope that as they do so, they will expedite their decision and that they will reflect on the fact that the UK and the EU, to which I was an ambassador, have both lifted their restrictions with respect to the MEK, but the State Department, I hope, will make their decision based on the merits and to do so quickly and promptly, again recognizing the precedents that others have created. It is important that we strengthen democratic forces not only in Iran but throughout the region. This is a critical inflection point in the history of this region. It is unacceptable for this regime to have either nuclear weapons or a nuclear weapons capability. Therefore, when we talk about every option being on the table, we need to mean that every option is on the table.
Speaking at the U.S. Islamic World Forum, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton noted that Iran's leaders have consistently pursued policies of tyranny abroad and at home. And these actions have not been limited to those just inside Iran's borders as well. And we need to be vigilant of the Iranian activities outside of Iran as well. And particularly, I know many of you here are very concerned about the attacks on Camp Ashraf, particularly those last April. I think many of you have seen the brutal video footage of that assault, but we must never lose sight of the fact to stand up against these types of attacks. The responsibility of turning over the Camp Ashraf to the Iraqi government was conditional on Iraqi government assurances that the residents of the camp would remain protected. I know many of you here are deeply concerned about those in Camp Ashraf, but also very involved in the effort to push the U.S. government to delist the MEK from the State Department's list of state sponsors of terrorism. And having worked closely in the Clinton administration with the peace process in Northern Ireland, and in the case of the MEK, you also face a government in Tehran that is providing zero democratic opening for change. Much easier with the Irish peace process when you had democratic governments both in Ireland and the UK willing to engage and give some political space. Within the U.S. government, old habits die very, very hard as well. But the process of change is an essential change. It is essential that this process occur, especially now in the 20th century. I am confident the Obama administration's current review will be decided on the merits. I know many of you think that it's all a political process in the past, but having spoken to a variety of people in the administration, I do think this will be decided on the fact.
In the 1990s, as a goodwill gesture to the regime in Tehran, our government placed the MEK on that list. By all accounts, this was done so as to help us engage with the regime in Tehran and perhaps get that regime to behave as a responsible member of the world community. Whether that policy was wise or foolish, there's no mistaking that it failed. Repeatedly, the Iranian regime has grown only more hostile and more threatening toward the United States and toward its neighbors. In the administration in which I served, that designation was continued, this time out of fear that if MEK were delisted, the Iranians would provide weapons, including deadly IEDs, to insurgents in Iraq. This policy, too, was a failure, because although the designation continued, Iran supplied deadly weapons, including IEDs, to those insurgents. And where do we stand today? Well, in Camp Ashraf, the organization that surrendered its arms and placed itself under international protection in 2003, to the point where the residents of Ashraf each received an identification card like this, like the one I'm holding up. designating them as protected persons under international law, has been attacked twice by Iraqi troops, once in July of 2009, once in April of 2011. At both times, when our Secretary of Defense was present in Iraq. The last time resulting in the murder of 35 defenseless women and men with weapons and vehicles supplied by the United States, operated by troops trained by the United States, and the United States has done nothing about it. Whatever the reason, it's long past time for this country to act based on its principles, to delist MEK and thereby encourage those in Iran who are struggling for regime change, and to make certain that the residents of Ashraf are either permitted to remain where they are, with security provided by an international force, or that they are permitted to leave Iraq for other countries.
We're in a position today where we can do something if we only will. We can't kick down the situation on the MEK anymore, or on Camp Ashraf. We're running out of time. We've got a deadline coming up. We know that we can count on other international organizations to help somewhat, but when you get down to it, the real force, the real factor, the real pusher and shover is going to be the United States of America. And that's why we have to encourage our Department of State to come up with the answers on what they are going to do to finish this review. As I say, you've given them a lot to think about. You've given them a third way to proceed towards removing what I would say is an autocratic theocracy of people who are certainly opposing anything like a free democratic republic. And I also would say that we are owed an explanation by both the Department of State and by President Maliki on what actually happened at Camp Ashraf. I'm not satisfied. I understand that. I think that we need more assurances of what is going to happen in terms of protection as we proceed, and then, of course, the final justice.
Democratic opposition in Iran that has the unified support of Europe and the U.S. is a key element. A free, peaceful, and non-nuclear Iran will be able to say goodbye to military confrontations with the U.S. and its neighbors, international sanctions, and the like. And I hope that the democratic opposition in Iran can make this point known to and accepted by their supporters. You know, yes, there was a Persian Spring before this current Arab Spring. We need those forces to be aided, inspired, and supported as a central tenet of U.S. and European policy. The U.S. will leave behind a presence in Iraq. We don't know for how long. That'll be continuously worked with successive Iraqi and successive American administrations for however long it is. But I do hope that as part of that, there could be worked into the Iraqi-American security agreements at least a sense of overwatch over the responsibility for that the international community has accepted for protecting the residents of that camp.